Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Introduction to ArcGIS Online workshop. I'm Janet Reyes, the Geospatial Information Librarian here at UC Riverside Library. I'm happy to spend the next hour going over some of the features of this software as a service geographic information system that's available in the cloud. Has a lot of interesting features. The last time I gave this workshop was about 2 years ago, and a lot has happened since then, so it was time for a refresh. So I hope even if you've been exposed to ArcGIS Online in the past, that you'll learn something new today. This workshop is being recorded, and in about a week, or at least later this month, we'll have an edited version of the recording up on the library's YouTube channel. If you registered for this workshop, I have your email address and you'll be getting a copy of the slides. The slides contain a lot of useful links for you as you have a journey with ArcGIS Online. So be sure to watch your inbox for that email that will have the slides available. I didn't really create this as a workshop that's hands-on. However, I think the pace might be suitable for you to try to follow along if you'd like, and I'll try to provide information in the chat as we go if you would like to try to follow along or at least explore it while I'm talking. That'll be fine. But the basic intent was for you to have this information and then go off and explore on your own at your leisure. I do have an assistant today helping monitor the chat and also pasting information into the chat. And she'll also flag me down if there's something I need to attend to based on what's online. I'm trying to think if there's any other housekeeping sort of things. Oh, something new, especially if you're a UCR affiliate, you'll notice the QR code in the bottom left corner. This is something new we're trying as far as capturing information about our attendees. So if you are online and would like to scan that QR code, that'll take you to a link that would help. Also, I believe the link for this site for the attendance is going to be pasted in the chat if it's not there already. So again, just something we're trying out and hope you'll cooperate if you are a UCR affiliate. I realize some of you may not be, so you don't really have to worry about that. Yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping. So let's get going with the content of this workshop. So here's our overview for today. Why would someone want to use ArcGIS Online? How would you get started? Then it's possible to acquire existing map layers to bring into your ArcGIS Online session, and we'll look at that. Also, it's possible to create a map layer if you have a table that contains geospatial information. And we'll take a look at how you would do that. Changing map appearance is something else, a common task that we'll have. This is where I will switch over to a live demo and we'll see if that works. To give you a feel for the kind of things you can adjust. We'll look at some of the tools that are available for analyzing your data, seeing how you can collaborate and share your work. And then finally, I have some resources for you at the very end. So why would we use ArcGIS Online? Well, this is a slide. I've taken the information on this slide from the Esri website. That company is spelled ESRI. It is the maker of all things that start with ArcGIS, and it has the largest market share of any geographic information system provider in the world. And it's headquartered just 15 miles away from our campus here up in Redlands, California. So anyway, ArcGIS Online can do all the things you see on the slide. You can work with data, you can make maps, analyze your data, collaborate, share, and when it says expand your work, what that means is that you can do customization either with your analysis or the appearance of the work or something like that. So there are ways to do all those things. I have up the top in the title that sometimes you'll see ArcGIS Online referred to as AGOL or AGO. So just to give you a clue, if you see that somewhere in a chat or something, or forum, they're talking about ArcGIS Online there. So strengths and limitations. When I first started giving this workshop, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the balance of what was in the column and the caveat column has shifted. So it used to be there was a lot of reasons why maybe you wouldn't want to use ArcGIS Online. However, Esri has put in a lot of functionality to it over the years. So now the balance has kind of shifted, and there are lots of good reasons to use ArcGIS Online. On the left-hand side of the slide, most of those bullet points, like all the ones in the middle, are ones that we just saw on the previous slide, right? The things you can do with it. So I just want to focus now on the very first bullet point under Use It To, and then the very last one. So ArcGIS Online, one of its great strengths is it's wonderful if you have a workflow where you need to have people out in the field, walking around, seeing stuff, maybe taking pictures or making notes about what they're seeing. They can do that with ArcGIS Online. Push a button and all that information that they collected will be populated into a digital map that's can be viewable by your organization or anybody in the world, really. So it's really amazing for that purpose. And then at the bottom of that side of the bullet points, ArcGIS Online is often promoted as a tool that can be used to teach GIS on a less complicated platform. So I don't know if you've heard, but geographic information systems, there's a steep learning curve for most of the desktop versions of it. ArcGIS Online is a little bit simpler. So for that reason, it's a great introduction for students and that, or for just somebody who wants to learn it, to get some of the concepts down. So it's great for that. However, there are still some times when you would want to maybe choose something different, especially a desktop version of a GIS. If you have very complex cartographic needs, and cartographic means just the way the map is displayed, so what the map looks like. If it's complex, you might want a different tool also for analysis, same type of thing. If it's very specialized or complex, ArcGIS Online might not be the best choice for you. And certainly, if you're going to be working offline a lot, choosing an online tool may not be your best move. So for those reasons, you might want to think about finding something different. I mentioned about the analysis tool, analytic tools and complexity and all that. So this slide, I think, kind of gets that point across a little bit more. On the left-hand side, you see that ArcGIS Online has a total of 230 tools, which is impressive. The first time I gave this workshop 6 years ago, the total was 29. So you can see they've added quite a bit to it. However, if we look on the right-hand side of the slide, ArcGIS Pro, which is the desktop, more complicated version of GIS, more than 2,000 tools. So you can see, yes, you can do a lot of things with ArcGIS Online, but you can do a ton more with the desktop version. So before we go on, I want to mention the spatial data types. We saw these phrases mentioned on the previous slide. I didn't point them out, but they were there. We have vector and raster as spatial data types. On the left-hand side, we're seeing the vector type of spatial data. What this is doing is pretty much mimicking how a person would hand draw a map. So if you have tiny features, maybe like light poles or something like that, you're going to represent them as a point. Linear features like streams or roads, you're going to represent them as lines, and then areas or shapes. In vector world, we call those polygons. Something two-dimensional, it could be counties, it could be a territory of some animal species, you know, whatever is covering ground would be represented as a polygon. On the right-hand side, we have raster. I think we're all familiar with this concept from computer screens and images and things like that. It's an array of pixels. Pixels are all the same size. Every pixel has a value assigned to it. So you can use raster to represent things similar to what we were seeing on the left-hand side. But really the strength of a raster is that it's capturing information one little pixel at a time, so you can show the continuous variation over the landscape of whatever it is you're capturing, whether it's something in an image, or a lot of times there are remote sensing tools that can do things like pick up information about temperature variation across the landscape or reflectance or something like that. So rasters and vectors, they have different strengths and weaknesses. I think most people will use vector at some point who use GIS. I think there's a subset of people who will use raster information. Raster is more, in my mind, associated with the sciences, but vector is used by people in all different kinds of disciplines. And I also want to mention attribute tables before we go on. These sit in back of the vector map that you see on your screen when you're working with a GIS. And this is what makes a GIS more powerful than a printed map. Because with the rows, each row in a attribute table corresponds to a feature that you're seeing on the map. Each column in the attribute table corresponds to a different type of information about the feature. So similar to any spreadsheet that you've ever worked with, you can do all kinds of things, choosing one column or field to emphasize or display or analyze. You can do all kinds of things. And that's what makes a GIS pretty powerful. And the example of an attribute table I have on the slide shows you that you can have all different kinds of attributes in your table. We have a date time stamp in one column. We have numeric values. We have, alphanumeric things. So pretty much you can have blanks even. You can have URLs. You can have all kinds of things in your attribute table. So now that we've gotten a little bit of background on that, and if you're still interested in learning more about ArcGIS Online, we'll look at how to get started. These next few slides are going to be very UCR centric. If you're at a different academic institution, you might have something similar but not identical to what we're going to go through. And we'll talk about some other options as well. So if you go to the URL that you see on the bottom left side of the screen, ucr.maps.arcgis.com, it will get you to this landing page. I need to say that also that there is a non-academic version of ArcGIS Online for our campus, and that's used by the people who run the campus. So they're doing things like mapping the buildings and the trees and the plumbing and the pathways and all that kind of stuff. They have their own ArcGIS Online instance, but most of the rest of us are going to use the academic ArcGIS Online. I did not put the URL for the non-academic one because it's very similar, and I don't want people to get confused and go to the wrong one. So we just need to know the one that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. At the very bottom of that slide, it says how to create a public account. So if you are not affiliated with a university or an employer or somebody else who already has an ArcGIS Online organization going on, it is possible for individuals to create their own public account. It's not going to have all the functionality available to you that we in the university do, but you'll still be able to do quite a bit with it. And it would be like a great learning experience if you want to give it a try on your own. So I have the sign in circled on the upper right. And if you clicked that button, you would get to an interface that looks like this. There are several tempting choices here on what to do next, but I have the arrow pointing to the big blue UCR button. That's the one you want to click. When you do that, it takes you to the familiar multi-factor authentication that we go through here at UCR. And once you do that, presto, you have an account. You will get into the account the same way every time. So there's no extra password to remember or anything like that. And this is available for UCR faculty, students, and staff. Any affiliate can create an account this way. So the next few slides are going to talk about what you'll see once you first get inside ArcGIS Online. One of the things I wanted to point out on this slide was if you click the matrix of 9 dots at the upper right, that will reveal all the different apps that are within ArcGIS Online. And there's a ton, and they have changed over time. They will continue to change. On the left side, I'm pointing out some of the apps that are available, not all of them, but you see the first set of bullet points. There's a bunch of apps related to collecting data in the field. For analyzing data, we have Business Analyst. Now, we also used to have something called Community Analyst, You can see that's kind of been faded out here. So they have, Esri has removed that as a possibility. I also have insights here circled in black. That was another thing I was going to put under this analyze data heading. However, when I looked at it just recently, it says this is going to be deprecated too. So insights is going away. But at least we have business analysts if you wanted to have an app that's specifically for looking at different types of data, and especially from a business framework. There's a bunch of apps for sharing your work. So you may have heard of Story Maps, which is a great little app that lets you integrate maps along with text and other kinds of media. Experience Builder is similar. There's dashboards. I think we've all seen some of those that have maps and charts, and they can be dynamic or static, all kinds of things, and so forth. There's something called Hub, which is great for sharing your work, and it's also great for collaboration. And there's more. And like I said, sometimes apps are removed, and Insights seems to be the next one on the chopping block as far as I can tell. So this changes every 6 months or so, pretty much, on what's available. There's also one right next to Insights here. It's called Living Atlas, and I'm going to be talking about that quite a bit in the slides ahead, because that's going to be a great data source that you can have available. So if you click on your name at upper right when you're inside ArcGIS Online, you're going to see this. And what I wanted to point out is that there's help that you can get from directly being logged into your account. You can also find these things, the forums and the blogs and things, just by searching online, but it's kind of nice to have it available just within your ArcGIS Online session as well. I did want to mention quickly that when you get in, you'll see a menu across the top, and I just wanted to point out what those things are. I think for most of us, today, especially, I'm going to be focusing on what you can do with just making a map that is two-dimensional. So this would be a tab of interest to most of us. But you do see there's what they call scenes, and that enables you to create 3D visualizations, which is pretty cool. And content, this is going to be a big player if you end up ever making anything in ArcGIS Online or bringing in layers that you think you are going to use to make maps in the future. You'll be using a lot on the content tab, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that right now. So when you've been around like I have, you'll start piling up some content that you've made, and this is kind of what it looks like. You can see there's a list of things I've made and what they are, like whether it's a web map or a story map, something like that. I have a web map application at the bottom of that slide. You can see on the left-hand side, you can create folders and keep your stuff organized. You can also filter things. If your list gets quite long, there's ways you can search for particular types of items or that kind of thing. So yeah, this is the content page. It'll be very familiar to you. In a few slides, we're going to be talking about the Living Atlas. And so you can see you can get to that through your content page. If we click on any one of these items in your content, you get to what's called the item detail page. It looks something like this. It tells you more about that items. It gives you a little thumbnail view. And most importantly, I think, it shows you the kind of things you can do with that item, whether you open it in different applications or share it or, do other kind of things with it. So that's the relationship between the contents and then what you'll see when you're picking out a particular one that you might want to work with next. So I almost didn't include this slide this time, but I think it's still worth mentioning that there's a difference between Map Viewer and Map Viewer Classic. When ArcGIS Online was first released, which I believe was like 2013 to 2015, sometime in there, what you see on the right-hand side, Map Viewer Classic, is the way it looked. And that was the version that had 29 tools, and that was about it, right? A few years after they released ArcGIS Online, they switched over to Map Viewer, which you see on the left, and this is currently the default Map Viewer. And they moved functionality from Map Viewer Classic to Map Viewer over time. They got a bunch of it in at first, and then they had to keep migrating stuff over to Map Viewer as we go. I think there are still a few things that you can do in Map Viewer Classic that you can't do in Map Viewer. But if that statement is true, it's probably not going to be true for too much longer, because they'll probably just finish the migration and everything will be over in Map Viewer. However, I did want to mention that not too long ago, I was using Map Viewer. Something was supposed to work and it wasn't, and I was kind of stuck. So what I did was open it up in Map Viewer Classic. I got the thing to work, what I needed to do, and then I brought it back into Map Viewer and was able to continue on my way. So just for that reason, sometimes it's nice to know that Map Viewer Classic is available if something's not working quite right for you in the current map. And you notice on Map Viewer, there's a dark toolbar on the left and a light toolbar on the right. The one on the left is known as the contents toolbar. And if you can kind of think of it as like data management. So whether you're bringing in different layers, if you have, you're ready to share your map, doing all that kind of thing, saving stuff. Although sometimes I think some of the things that are in the contents toolbar really belong over on this other side, the settings toolbar, which is more for when you have something in your map view, a layer, here's all the things that you can do with it. You can analyze it, you can change the appearance, all kinds of things like that. So there's kind of a distinction between what you'd find on one toolbar versus the other, but sometimes it can be confusing to find a particular task, I would guess. Okay, I'm going to take a pause and take a drink, and just wanted to see if there's anybody that had questions so far before we go on. Okay, so now we'll talk about acquiring existing map layers. In my mind, there are like 4 buckets that you can get map layers from. I mentioned before the Living Atlas of the World, and we'll still take a closer look at that in a few slides. This is curated content that Esri has collected. They're pretty confident that it is accurate and good information. And there's a couple different ways you can get to the layers in Living Atlas. If Living Atlas doesn't have what you need, you can look at trustworthy websites, such as from government agencies. Some academic institutions have geoportals, like I know the Big Ten Alliance has one. Stanford and Berkeley have some. Other places might have layers that they've collected and are offering up for anybody to use. And also nonprofit organizations. I'm thinking of places like the United Nations, World Wildlife Fund, other places like that. They have their data and they're putting it up there for people to use as well. The third bucket is from uploaded files. So if you have something stored locally that maybe you made in one of the desktop versions of a GIS, you can upload it into ArcGIS Online. And also, if you have like a CSV file that contains geospatial information, there's a way to convert that into a map, and we'll go through that process, or I'll show you how to go through that process in a little bit. And then my 4th bucket is kind of at the bottom here. It's like other content from ArcGIS Online. When you make something in ArcGIS Online, you have the ability, the default is to set it as private, so only you can see it. So you have to opt in for other people to be able to see it. And some people do, they make stuff and then they say, yes, the public can all access this. But we don't know the reliability of the data that they have or their process for doing what they did. So it's kind of like buyer beware. It might be great data for what you need, but we're not really sure all the time whether it was done to the level of specificity and accuracy that you might need for your application. So just buyer beware on picking out something like that. So just kind of reiterating for Living Atlas, like I said, you can access layers from Living Atlas from your content page. When you do click on that button at far right, you get something that looks like what we're seeing on my screen. And you can filter. Living Atlas has thousands and thousands of things. So what you can do on the left-hand side is say what kind of item you're looking for, and then they have different categories of what data you might want to have. So in this case, I filtered by the category that they call at risk right here. And these are some of the results that came up. So you can see they're international from all over the world, and you can read about the details about a particular layer. And if you think, well, that sounds good, then what you can do is just go ahead and open it in your map viewer and take a look further and see if it fits your needs or not. If you're in map viewer, you can also get to living atlas layers that way. And it's a little bit tricky. You might not find it on your own at first, but what you do is on that left dark toolbar, you click the add button, which is a plus sign inside a circle. That opens up the browse layers option. And then when you click that, you see something where the default is my content, but you can click the down arrow on my content, and living atlas is one of the choices underneath that down arrow. I want to point out too that underneath this browse layers option, we have other ways that you can add data. So from a URL, from a file that you might have stored on your computer locally, or maybe in OneDrive or something like that. And you can also add media layers. Right now, the only media that you can add is JPEG or PNG. But those are available to you as well to go ahead and add in. So if you wanted to add an item to your content, for instance, maybe you want to use it for a map, maybe you're going to want to use it for future maps as well. You don't want to associate it just with one map that you're creating. You can upload things. What you do is on your content page, there's a button on the far left that says new item. And this is the kind of interface you will see when you choose that. All right, so we were talking about adding data. And now we're going to look at how you would go about, if you have a spreadsheet that has geospatial information in it, how you would create a map layer from that. But before we go on, I want to mention credits, because this might concern people if they encounter a little flag about you're going to consume credits when you do this uploading a table and making a map from it. Credits aren't consumed for everything that you do, but there are some tasks that are pretty much a heavy lift for the GIS, like figuring out the locations of places from a table. If you're doing some routing, like what's the best route for my delivery trucks to go on a given day kind of thing, or image storage, that's pretty heavy as well. So that will consume some credits. Now, the good news is that everybody, when they create an account, they get some credits right off the bat. And if you do find yourself burning through your credits, all you have to do is ask, at UCR at least, all you have to do is ask an administrator, and I'm one of them. You can ask me, and I say, please, I need some more credits, and I can replenish those probably, almost all the time. If anybody's just being crazy and asking for credits every other day, we might not do that. But most of the time it works out fine. And you can see at the bottom the little screenshot that this was taken of what my credit balance is right now after years of fairly frequent usage of ArcGIS Online, and I've only burned through a little over 100 of my credits. So that gives you maybe a perspective on how this goes for a lot of people. So when you're going to run a process, if credits are going to be consumed, you should see something on your screen prior to when you actually run it. It will tell you how many credits you'll be using. And you can see your credit status by clicking on My Settings and then Credits. Okay, so like I said, the scenario is we have a CSV that has geospatial information, and it would be awesome if I could create a map from this, and you can. The thing is, you have to be careful with the formatting of the table before you go ahead and upload it and expect it to work. So like I mentioned earlier on, in the attribute table, which is what we're kind of going to mimic here, we have columns that contain a different type of information and rows that contain, each row corresponds to a different feature on the table, on the map, right? So the columns, let's talk about them first. You'll need to have at least one column that contains the geospatial information, whether it's a latitude column and a longitude column, or if you have place names like county names or something like that, or you can even have addresses, street addresses. The GIS is smart enough to, or has the information that already baked into it, so it can associate a address line in your table to a particular location in the world within reason. It doesn't have totally worldwide coverage, but it's pretty good. So you need to make sure that you have at least one column that has that kind of information in it. Each column has to have a header in the first row, and there's all kinds of special rules about what those headers look like. The first character must be a letter. You can't use any special characters except an underscore in your header title for your column, and you can't have any spaces in that header. You have to make sure each header is unique and no subheaders. And the last thing is not about the headers necessarily, but you just need to make sure that the formatting for that column is consistent. Like if it's numerical for the first 500, it needs to be numerical all the way down and not like a general kind of format. So check on all those things, and each row has to represent a different feature, like I said, and you can't have blank rows or subheaders as occupying one of those rows. So a few years ago, students came to me and they had a table that was formatted like this, what you see on the upper left. A perfectly fine format for collecting data about different ethnicities in different counties in California, but we have several problems with this formatting, right? Based on what I just said. We've got headers that start with a character. We have a subheader row. Row 2 is like occupying subheaders for what was up here at the top. And then we have Alameda County, for instance, repeated multiple times with data associated with that county. But really what we need is something like what we see down here, where we have just one row for Alameda County and all the data for that county kind of spread out long-wise. So each column is a different type of data about Alameda County. And so forth. So you might have to do some data cleaning, data wrangling to get your information in the right format before you can proceed with uploading your CSV and have it work. And I wanted to take you through that sequence pretty quickly because I think it is applicable to a lot of what people might be wanting to do. When you first add your table as an item to ArcGIS Online, you'll see this choice. How would you like to add the CSV? And the default is to add the CSV and create a hosted feature layer. Now, the first time I was doing this, I'm like, I don't want a hosted feature layer. I don't even know what that is. I want a map, but it doesn't say that. But you do see, like in the fine print, it does say display points on a map. So this is the one you want if you want to create a map from it. The other option is to have the CSV just be uploaded and remain as a table, not to be used for mapping purposes at this time. When you go on to the next screen after that, it's kind of nice. You get a chance to pick which of the columns in your spreadsheet you actually want to work with in the mapping. So if you have a spreadsheet that has 50 columns of data, but you're really only interested in 10 of those columns, at this point, you can pick which 10 columns you want to be populating the map, and you can ignore the rest and they won't be appearing as even a choice in your map moving forward. Next, it's going to be like trying to figure out which is the column in your spreadsheet that has the location data. In this case, it guessed correctly that county was the field that I wanted to associate with the mapping information already contained in ArcGIS Online. So make sure, especially for your location data column, that you've got a header that really describes it very clearly, and not some kind of code name for that particular type of feature. And you can see in the bottom right corner of that screenshot, it was going to consume like 1.7 credits for me to upload this table. And finally, you get a screen where you get to give a title to the the map that you're going to create, the layer that you're going to create, where you're going to store it, and you can add tags and a summary for description metadata purposes. So that would then generate a map, or in this case, a set of points that represent the counties. That's great, but what I really wanted in this case was having that data that's associated with my table loaded into the attribute table for a layer that has county boundaries in it, so I can actually work with that as a polygon layer. What we can do, there's a couple different ways you can proceed. This one seems to be the most reliable one for me, where you can go out in Living Atlas or somewhere else and maybe find a geographic layer that has the outlines of the counties. It may have other data too, but really you just need a layer that has the county names and the county boundaries itself. Go ahead and add that to a blank map. Once you've uploaded that table and it's created a hosted feature layer, which is really like a map, bring that layer into your session as well. And you'll see that the points that are represented from the table you just uploaded are now sitting inside their corresponding county. So that's a good start. But what we need is, again, like to transfer that information over from the points to the polygons. And the way you can do that is using one of those analysis tools. So what you would do is go to the right side toolbar, find the analysis icon or the word analysis. That opens up a menu. We would want something in the summarize data section, and it's called join features. So you would pick that tool. And then it can get a little complicated, but I've included the link for where it describes how to use this tool. The thing is, it's going to be matching up the column in your CSV with a comparable column in the polygon, in this case, the polygon data. And it has to be worded the same too, that's one thing. So like if my CSV had a column for county names and it said Fresno County or El Dorado County, and my layer that I found just says Fresno or El Dorado, that's not going to be a match. It has to be a perfect match. So just be aware of that. Anyway, you would run this tool, the join features tool, and in the end, you will get that information translated over into the polygon layer that you could then do all kinds of analysis with the polygons and visualizations and things like that. Okay, I'm going to take another quick pause, and then we're going to go looking at how we change map appearance. And this, if it works well, will be a short live demonstration of what it looks like in ArcGIS Online. Did anybody have any questions so far? We're good. I'm going to start by saying that what you'll see in the background when you open a map layer or a map session is what we call a base map. So you don't have to know how to draw Europe or the United States or anything. Esri provides several different versions of base maps that you can pick from as a backdrop to the data that you're working with. And you don't have to stick with a particular one. At any time, you can go ahead and switch it out and see what makes more sense for the thing that you're looking at. So sometimes it's really good to have, say, satellite imagery as a background. Other times that's just too much clutter and you just want something that's very clean and simple in the background. There's also base map choices where you're emphasizing streets or the terrain, like what the topography is looking like. So there's all different kinds of choices. And like I said, you're not stuck with any one. At any time, you can switch it out and pick something different and go back to the original one or whatever. And you will find that on your dark toolbar on the left-hand side. Okay, so for the demonstration I'm going to try, I have two layers picked out. I got them both from the Living Atlas. The first one is the National Risk Index. This is talking about how states compare in terms of if there is some kind of natural hazard affecting the state, how much is going to be lost, dollar-wise and so forth. And then the other one is a point layer, which is US major cities. So we'll look at some variations on how you can symbolize or change the way the map looks in ArcGIS Online. So I do have slides that kind of describe this, but what I'm going to do right now is exit the slideshow and go to my view of ArcGIS Online. So as you can see right now, we have the National Risk Index visualized. And right now I have put the little slash through the eyeball for the US major cities, so we're not seeing that one at the moment. There's a couple of different ways you can get to changing the visualization for a layer. For this, I'm going to start with the polygon layer, and I'm going to click Show Properties. And that opens up another panel on the right-hand side, as you can see. And I wanted to show this because it's now showing you what those colors mean on the map. So it's kind of intuitive for most of us, I think, that the greater the value, the darker the color will be, or the darker the shade. And that's the way they've decided to represent this out the door kind of thing. So states that are shaded in with very dark hues will have a higher risk than those that are pretty light. So Wyoming's looking pretty good here. That's got a very low risk of loss from natural hazards. So that's all nice, but what we can do is we can also bring in like another feature of the attribute table and symbolize two different things, concepts at once. So what I'm going to do is click Edit Layer Style here. And it's going to allow me to pick another field from the attribute table from this National Risk Index to symbolize. And there's a whole bunch, but I'm going to pick something that we'll probably figure out for ourselves, but how about avalanche loss? So I'm going to click that and I'm going to click Add. And it's going to take a minute to think about this. And I hope it's not going to freeze. But this is called smart mapping. So Esri has created this so that it'll make choices that it thinks is pretty good for how you might want to symbolize both of these things at once. So as you can see, as you might have guessed, Colorado has got some concerns with avalanches, whereas Louisiana and Florida, not so much. But you can see still that Florida does have high risk from other types of natural hazards because we see that from the very dark color. And of course, California does too, and Texas. So anyway, that gives you an idea of how you can represent two different values at once in a map. There were other choices that we could have made as well on how to represent that. But I'm going to turn this one off. I'm going to turn on the major cities now, and we're going to look at points. So right now, all the points for cities, they're all represented the same. They're all dots, if you will, of the same size and color, but we can change that. This time I'm going to just go over here to styles, which is kind of a shortcut to get to where we were before with the other one. I am going to toggle it now to my other layer, which is major cities. And again, it's going to give me the choice of choosing a field, and we can figure out how to symbolize on that. I'm going to choose population class, which is like kind of breaks in the population. I think they have 10 different breaks in population size. And so if I just do that and click Add, it's now giving me points of different color. You can kind of see that there's a legend over here. But that's not really conveying much information at a glance. So we can pick a different style of representing those points. So counts and amounts by color, that would make like the most populous cities the darkest, which would be fine. However, I just want to demonstrate, let's try color and size. So we're emphasizing in two different ways. circle size and also circle color. But that's fine. And you could see, like in this case, it's it kind of changes as you zoom in and out. So that's something that's characteristic of an online map. So again, maybe this doesn't work for you and you would make a different choice. That's all fine. I also want to show that with an interactive map online, often you can click on something and you will get what's called a pop-up, which will explain like all the features in your attribute table that you have chosen to display in a pop-up. You do get a chance to manipulate your pop-up choices, like from the fields that are available to you. You can filter out the ones that you don't want people to see. You can change what the title is of your pop-up, so forth and so on. So that's something that's available to you as well. And also you can, I'll just close this out for Waterloo. You can also label your features. So I've already got it enabled here, but if I toggle that off, you see all the names go away. And you have styling choices. You can choose your font, you can choose your color, you can have a halo around the names. You can also choose what range of zoom the names would be visible. So as I zoom in, they're still visible, but if I zoom out, because it's gone past the circle now over here, the names are not showing up. So that reduces map clutter. So again, just a quick demo to show you the choices that you can make without too much effort to make the map look the way you want. So we will go back now to the slides. So again, this is a different example that the slide is describing, but same basic idea. This was for polygons. In this case, it was just like I have polygons for counties, and I just want the counties to maybe look different, have a different color for each one. Or if you wanted all counties to look the same, you can still change what color they are. You can make them hollow and just have the outlines of the counties if you want. That kind of thing is possible. For points, same thing. I wanted to mention, I was kept choosing fields, but you may have noticed there was an other option called expression. And this is something that Esri calls Arcade, is a language that you can use for more customization. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But if you don't like the out-of-the-box choices, you can use Arcade to kind of manipulate something more to your liking. And I didn't show you this on the live demo too, but you might have noticed that making a heat map from clusters of points is another option. So if that were important to you, we could have generated a map that looks something like this, where there's a lot of cities together that would show up as a hotspot. So that was another visualization that was possible. I showed you about configuring pop-ups. Yeah, like again, you can choose which fields are going to be included in the pop-up, and you can rearrange the order of the fields, and you can give them aliases for what their names are. So you don't have to stick with the sometimes ugly header names of your columns. You can make it something that's more understandable to the public. You can change the look of the pop-up itself if you use arcade expressions, I believe. So all kinds of things are possible there. And labeling features, we looked at that. You can toggle on enabling layers and then labels, and then figure out how you want those labels to appear. Okay, we're going to take a closer look at how you would go about analyzing data. We're getting closer to the end of the workshop, so hang in there. Analysis is a big deal with geospatial information. And like I said in the beginning, we have several tools available in ArcGIS Online, 200 and some. There are different sets of tools, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit because it can get confusing. If you see the little hammer, the tools, all the tools that deal with vector information, and there are some raster tools as well. If you choose a tool, what happens is you have the tool do the thing, and it leaves the original data set alone and it creates a new data set that has change that you just affected by choosing that tool. That's the basic difference between a tool and a raster function, which are for rasters only. But when you choose a raster function, you do not get to preserve the original. It just performs that change directly on the data set that you started with. So that's something important to know about raster tools versus raster functions. In the middle of this analysis menu, they put Model Builder in between these. And what this enables you to do is to build an analysis workflow. So if you have I need to start with this data and I need to do this thing to it. And once I have that product, I take a subset of that product and do this other thing to it and so forth. So you can build a model and then be able to run the model so that you don't have to keep clicking all the tools all the time, one by one, to get through each iteration. You can just create this model and then run it start to finish. So like I said, with the raster functions, that will transform your raster automatically. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of functions. And just to make things a little more complicated or confusing, some of the raster functions have the same name as raster tools. So you have to watch the icon that's available next to one versus the other. If it's a function, it'll have that FX in the corner. And if it's a tool, it'll have a little hammer in the corner, even if they have the same names. For any tool, Esri provides documentation that describes what the tool does. I have found this very helpful because sometimes just looking at the name of a tool, I have no clue on what it really does. So this documentation is super helpful. It gives examples on when you might use it. It gives you limitations and all kinds of things about it. So I just wanted to let you know there's this resource that will help you figure your way through some of the tools that are available. And the next few slides are just showing you some screenshots of the tools that are available. I'm not going to talk too much about any of them. I just thought I would give you a couple seconds to scan and get an idea for some of the things that can be done with your geospatial data here. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in particular I want to call out on this slide, although some of them might be interesting to some of us. We talked about the join features earlier, getting that tabular data associated with our polygons. And so there's that tool right there. More feature analysis tools. Use proximity is kind of interesting. I've had some consultations lately where faculty members are interested in using these tools for calculating travel, best routes and things like that. So there's all kinds of really fun things you can do there. This is more about managing your data. And then even more feature tools. Now we're all into the raster tools right here. So what I will call your attention to is the middle here. I don't know if you've heard about deep learning, but it is something where you have a model that is trained to recognize certain things on an image. So there are models that are already created, or there's models that you can create that will pick out all the, say, airplanes that are parked at an airport or something like that. So that's a really interesting deep learning AI kind of thing that's available to you, which is pretty darn sophisticated for where ArcGIS Online started out about 10 years ago. So I wanted to mention a few things about customization options. I talked about arcade expression language. Like I indicated before, this allows you to do things like performing mathematical calculations that you might need to manipulate your data. You can format what the text looks like. You can design custom symbols for your, say, point features. And Arcade is unique because it understands the GIS world. So it understands like the geometry types, the feature layers and things like that. So it works very nicely as far as working directly with geospatial data. Just recently, as you might have guessed, Esri has introduced an arcade assistant. So this is AI that will allow the user to input in natural language of what I want to do with this map. And it will then generate the arcade expressions for you based on what your prompt says. I just saw a demonstration of this yesterday. However, at this point in time, we have not enabled the use of AI, including Arcade Assistant at UCR. So that might be changing in the future. I don't know who will make that decision or when they will make that decision, but it is possible. But I just wanted you to know that, yes, there are some AI aspects to making things simpler when you're using ArcGIS Online. And also for customization, Python is an option as well. You can automate workflows. You can, again, do things with the visualization and analysis by using Python. All right, another feature of ArcGIS Online is it allows people to collaborate and share. So I just have a few slides on that. If you wanted to share your web map, remember I said the default is like the sharing level is just you yourself. You're the only one seeing it. But when you're ready to share it, you have two other choices. You can share it with your organization, which would mean anybody at UCR in the ArcGIS Online organization could see it, or you can turn it public and then anybody in the world would be able to see it. It's possible to create groups where you're all able to access some products that have been created, and that we use that for, excuse me, for class projects and things over time. So that is a possibility as well. And there's a special kind of group called a shared update group that needs a little bit of administrator interface, but that enables people to actually edit the same thing. They just can't do it simultaneously, but if it's in a shared update group, members of that group can each modify the product over time. You can create a web app from your map. So I mentioned story maps in the early section, dashboards. I think we've all seen. If you remember the pandemic, many people saw the Johns Hopkins dashboard of how that was progressing. That was an Esri ArcGIS Online product. And you can make apps, and Experience Builder is more like a slightly or greatly more sophisticated version of what you can do with story maps, where you have narrative and other types of media in addition to maps, or maybe not any maps at all, to help give context to what you want to share with the world. And lastly, I've mentioned ArcGIS Pro as the desktop version of the ArcGIS offerings. So you can create things in ArcGIS Pro and upload them to ArcGIS Online. And that's what I'm trying to show over here on the left-hand side. So if you have something that you've created on your desktop, you can go ahead and share it directly as a web map to ArcGIS Online. You can also create what's called a package, and that uploads. It's kind of like putting it, your file on a flash drive and handing it off to somebody else, but now it's going up into the cloud, where you yourself or somebody else can access that project and pull it down and work on the ArcGIS Pro project on their own personal machine. So that makes it quite nice too for file sharing. If you're in ArcGIS Pro, there's something called the catalog pane. And if you click over to the portal tab of the catalog pane, that will enable you to see the content that you can see from ArcGIS Online. If it's openly shared with your group or with your whole organization, if it's stuff that you've created yourself, and this would be Living Atlas over here. So you can pull in layers from online into your local desktop application of ArcGIS. And I just wanted to show you at the bottom here, this is what it looks like in ArcGIS Online if you have uploaded some packages here, whether it's for a layer or for the whole project that you're working with. You can upload it, and then somebody else or yourself can pull it down and go off and running with it. Okay, just a couple more slides here. There's a lot of jargon involved. They try to make it easy to understand, but I think sometimes there's still just some jargon that may get in the way. So I've included a couple resources here on this slide. Neither is absolutely wonderful, but they get you started at least. The first one is has some basic terms that are common, but it's not super comprehensive. And the second one is a GIS dictionary that has all kinds of terms applying to all different types of things. Sometimes I find that Esri used jargon to define other jargon, so that's a little bit of a circular route. But at least it's there and it could help you. And then lastly, I have resources for learning ArcGIS Online, tutorials, lesson galleries. I do find that the tutorials and lessons are very clear and very well thought out. And I recommend using those to learn more about ArcGIS Online. The community is also very good because you can see if other people have ever had the same issue or problem that you are encountering. And of course, FAQs. So that is it, I believe, in the chat. You may have seen a link to a survey. I did not mention that at the beginning, but if you do take a moment to fill out that survey, that would help us understand whether we've met your expectations today. You have a chance to answer a question about what other kind of workshop you might want to see, any kind of feedback like that. It only takes a minute, but it does really help us understand what we could do to improve. So I think we have, we've gone a few minutes over, I'm sorry. But I will keep the call open for anybody who has questions. So thank you for your attention today. And are there any questions or comments?
I have one. So, for example, I'm working a little bit with paleo rivers. So ArcGIS can do recreations about that kind of stuff, or it's easier for me to skip my stuff in UGIS and then transfer it to ArcGIS.
Yeah, I would say to be sure you get everything done that you want to have done. Well, you might want to start and make your stuff in QGIS, and then I think you would be able to bring it into ArcGIS Online.
Okay.
As long as it's like a shape file kind of.
Yeah.
Support. Yeah.
Okay. The other question is that, every time that we need to publish, sometimes you say like this map was made on whatever. If in the ArcGIS Online, you make it public, and then that link can be copied to your document so that everybody can see it, or should you create another type of link to provide that information to the reader?
Yeah, that is a little tricky. When you go to that item detail page on the right-hand side, you will see like a link that you can copy and share with other folks.
Okay.
That works better than the link that you might just pick off from the top of your screen, because that one will only be visible to people who are logged into UCR's ArcGIS Online. So yeah, and there's also an option for an embed link. So if you wanted to embed your map into a different website or something,
okay,
a separate link for that.
And just like a follow-up for that question is like, if you make it public, it's public for how much time, or?
It's indefinite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And until you make a change.
A change.
Never mind. I'm taking it back, and I'm just taking it to myself. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
At one point, you mentioned that ArcGIS Online is better for like working in the field. Are there any versions of ArcGIS Online that are like oriented or targeted for like mobile or like tablet use, or is it all like browser based?
Yeah, some of those tools, the question, if you couldn't hear online, it was about the field applications. And some of those tools like Quick Capture or Survey 123, they are designed for people to use on their phone. So making it very easy for the, say it's a field crew or something going around inspecting stuff that's broken. They can just pull it up on their phone and do what they need to do, take a picture of the thing. So it's very nice that way. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, thank you. Sorry, we went a little bit over time. But watch your inbox if you signed up for this, for the slides, and then watch the library's YouTube channel in a bit. We will get this up there nice and edited and everything. So thanks again, everyone.